live.
We are live right now.
We're officially live.
Hello?
Hello.
So I'm going to ask 5 questions to the San Jose reps here. Get your hand off my pad. We have Raymond, Frank, Kimmy, and Will. We have 2 former reps and 2 current reps here. And the reason I'm asking these questions and the reason we're doing this interview is because we've seen a switch in strength of clubs from our strongest clubs being in the Midwest to our stronger clubs being in the peripheries, which is usually not the case because our strongest clubs are always in those clubs areas that have the greatest draw. But recently, our strongest clubs have been in San Jose, Daytona, and in CMCC up in Toronto, which has changed somewhat. But I wanted to interview these guys because obviously there's some sort of a culture here. I've seen 4 changes in reps since I started coming here, maybe even 5, but 4 to 5 changes in reps for our MPI club that have continued to build momentum from group to group, and that's a very interesting scenario, and it's something that we don't see very often. So I wanted to take this time to kind of interview these guys and see what kind of culture they've built, and to ask them a few questions about what they're doing with their club that makes them so successful. So the first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask it to Ray, sitting here to my left. I'm going to ask him who started the club, as far as like, right, who started the growth of this club, and what was the vision or the plan originally when he kind of took the club over from, it was most likely Justin. Will. Yeah, actually, we should be asking Will this question. So I'm going back, I'm changing this. That's why it's live. This is why this is kind of fun. I'm going to ask Will. Will took the club over from Justin? Yes? No?
No, it was Kimmy.
Kimmy did. So Kimmy was the original one. So Kimmy's going to be the best one to answer this question.
I took the club over from Josuke.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Justin was the rep, Josuke was the club president.
Huh. Justin did a lot of work for this club, I can tell you that.
Yeah, he did.
So was there a plan?
Nope.
As far as like you taking over, was there any sort of action plan for you guys?
There was absolutely no action plan. The club consisted of me and Josuke. So I was the next in line. But I kind of continued on from what I learned from Josuke and Justin, just keeping on with the basics, just reviewing side posture, palpation, all of that stuff over and over and over again. And I think that since we just stuck with the basics, and there were a lot of other clubs going over fancy moves and everything like that that no one could replicate after club. So I think that people really appreciated just going over basics of palpation, how to find what to adjust, how to adjust it, and just something tangible that they could take home and practice more.
So there's no real plan, you just...
That was the plan.
That was the plan.
Foundation.
As someone who actually benefited from her tutelage in this whole thing, like when I came to started at Palmer, the club was rather small. I remember when I first showed up, there was maybe, I don't know, 10 people there, and some of them had left, and I remember looking at Kimmy and going, all right, what are we doing today? And so we started doing circle stuff, and she was right. I mean, we practiced a lot of the basics, and a lot of it was like, how do you find what you're going to actually do? Because you can learn all the adjusting you want, but if you're not able to find what's wrong, there's no point to do that. I mean, you're just blowing through joints that maybe don't need, or they may need it, maybe they don't.
Right.
But so she's right. Yeah. And then Will stepped in a little bit later, and then both of them ran the club from then on. And then I got pulled into it.
So what was the timeline between you and Will? Like when did you come
She was with Josuke. I was with Justin. So
Okay.
we were roommates. So she and Josuke were working together. Me and Justin were working together. So since those 2 were MPI reps and head of the club, then we were in the same quarter, so we kind of just met each other in the middle. It was like,
That was the plan.
yeah, that was the plan.
There we go. It took a while.
So since you guys have taken over, though, like you've consistently had good classes here. Is there any sort of so what's your kind of your key to consistency? Like, what did you guys do? Because I saw the biggest switch with you 2 guys. Like I saw the biggest transformation in just attendance to our clubs, excitability, consistency. We had some people come out to some adjust-a-thons, travel long distance to Chicago. I saw a real change in just kind of the culture. So was there anything that you guys did other than just building a foundation and sticking to the basics, like old John Wooden style?
John Wooden style.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Will and I were both pretty active in different clubs on campus, went to a lot of different seminars, and personally I found these seminars to be the most beneficial. And I think that the people that were learning from us, you know, everybody wants to figure out which seminars to take, and I truly think that if you go to motion palpation seminars, you're going to learn pretty much everything that you need to learn, and you get a piece of everything of the other seminars. But I think that just the fact that Will and I both stood by those palpation seminars, and that was the one. Like, if anyone asked me what one seminar should I take this year, it was always definitely motion palpation. So I think that that translated with the club and with the people that we were working with, and they just started coming, and I mean, the seminars are awesome. They speak for themselves, so once people started going, it built a lot of excitement on our campus.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because so that kind of transitions into the next question. Like, so how do you keep that momentum going as far as like your rep selection? Was there a process to that? I mean, obviously you missed horribly on these two guys.
Yeah.
But was there any sort of process? Because there's a lot of clubs out there that, I mean, this is a high turnover type of environment. Like, we see, you guys are here for tops of 3.5 to 4 years. You're a rep for maybe 3 years tops. Like, where there's a lot of turnover, so like the consistency of your club has been something that's kind of an outlier, and that's why we're so interested in it, because you guys have held this consistency over 4 to 5 years. Like, that's tough to do.
Yeah.
Because it's always based on the strength of the reps. Do you guys have any sort of process to selecting like the next reps?
Will and I actually had to create a little process because there was a lot of demand as far as people interested in being reps, and so we really sat down and thought about what has made this club work for us, how we interact as a team, and like Will has strengths that I lack. I do things that Will.
Definitely lack.
So I think that we worked really well together as a team, and so we were looking to add to that team. And so we actually had interviews and looked for people that always attended club, not just the seminars or not just once every so often, but we wanted someone that was passionate like we were about the club.
So you guys
That's how we
actually
ended up
like
with
an
these
interview
guys.
process.
Yeah, definitely the qualities was someone who was very outgoing, who could interact with everybody, and be nice to everybody, and like get people, corral everybody to, you know, drive up that energy to go.
Right.
But then there would be like the boring stuff, you know, the background, you know, the emails, the paperwork, you know, getting all of that.
Well,
Yeah.
That was me.
Now it's me.
You know, so you got to have those two working together, and I think that's the foundation of, you know, being the rep.
Right, and that's great, because I think a lot of clubs think it's the guy that can adjust the best or the girl that's the smartest. And that's definitely, I mean, that's part of it. I think you have to have the skills to match what you guys teach, but I think you have to be able to teach it and communicate it and get it across in a way that definitely people can feel like a tangible purpose and passion behind it. And I think that's something that we don't do a great job at as a club, as an organization, is like kind of fostering that idea that you need to have the skills, you have to have a baseline set of skills, you have to have a baseline set of knowledge, and you definitely have to work hard at what you do, but you also have to be able to communicate and get that purpose and passion coming across to other students. So that's cool that you guys have an interview process. Like, it's something that I think a lot of clubs out there that are struggling, that are trying to build or rebuild or even start fresh, like they don't know how to, you know, how to do that and where to start. And so that's kind of what we're doing this, part of what we're doing this. So your plan moving forward, do you guys have a plan? Yeah, obviously that's on you two guys.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you continue this momentum? Like, that's the big thing.
I'm actually about to step down as well, but we already have 2 new reps, and we went through the exact same process that Will and Kimmy both did. So some of those processes, like, they have to have been to at least 3 seminars, so they're part of it. Like, they've gone through the process of like being a student first and like actually learning from everyone and then applying it, practicing it in clubs, and like it's all about presence and creating a culture. So right now we really invest in the club. We spend an hour every week at our activities break, and we just break it down and make sure there's like there's not like this guru mentality where everyone's like, oh look, it's an upper quarter showing us everything. It's like, no, we want to create a culture where there's a back and forth, we're questioning things, and like, how does this make sense? How do I do this? And creating an open door. And so far, it's working. But
Good.
yeah.
Frank? I know you like to work with the younger quarters, like you've been a big part of like bringing younger quarter students into our classes, which has been super cool, so.
Part of the way that I've always addressed this, even when when I got pulled into the circle.
The nest.
The nest, all those years ago. Part of I mean, at the time when I was pulled into the nest, Will and Kimmy, they had a system and everything was down, and I was kind of just on the outside, and I wasn't sure what my position was, so I made my own. And my thing was I would go and talk to the individual quarters on their own. And part of the thing was I went in and identified where their weaknesses were, or where they were not comfortable, what they weren't comfortable with. And a lot of the times in the younger quarters, you can't feel a damn thing.
Right.
And so you're sitting there and you're like, what are you talking about? And they're telling me to find this mammillary, and I can't, and we'll get onto that another subject.
Right.
But basically, it's like finding fixation, finding these things. And so when you talk to a younger quarter and you say, look, here, I was in your shoes. I was in the same place you were. And the way that I was able to figure this out is by coming to these things, and it's very straightforward. There's no, crazy magic or something behind it, like no crystals, none of that stuff.
No torque.
Yeah, right.
No fancy instruments.
But
Right.
so part of that is just you need to identify with whatever group you're trying to work with. I mean, you got to look at the entire school. So it's like in the younger side, yeah, they need help finding things, and then later on, yeah, actually adjusting those things, and then so on and so forth. And then in the later quarters, it's how do I actually apply this?
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, you need to look at, what conditions am I treating, because they're going to be in clinic or whatever they are. So it's like you have to look at that whole scope and what is your audience that you're pitching to.
Right.
So
some of the concerns that we get just as an organization is, like this weekend we're doing a lower dynamic. Like, do you think you're too young or too old to take any of these classes? Like a lot of try-ones think, well, I'm not advanced enough because I don't even know what I'm feeling. So, like, my biggest thing is that what we try to do with these classes is we try to build in this class that kind of builds on each concept as it goes through. So you're never too young to start. But how do you get that across to your students? Like, what do you say to them?
Personally, when I have explained why someone should come to an upper dynamic, that was the second seminar I think that I went to, and it was over at the old place, which was super tiny. It was your first
Very
seminar.
intimate. Yeah.
It was
nice. It was the nest.
Yeah, for sure, the real nest. But anyway, where were we?
How do you convince younger tribes?
Right. Okay. So.
Or what do you say to those people?
The thing is you're going to, as a student, when you're in the first couple of years or whatever, I mean, you're going to get exposed to so much stuff, and some of it's going to stick.
Right.
Some of it won't, and you're going to need to go again, and that's why we keep coming back to these things, because no matter how many times I personally go to a full spine, which I've been to 9 or something like that, a lot of them, it's at the point, every time I go, I learn something new.
Exactly.
I will never learn everything that I'm exposed to in one seminar, no matter how much Adderall someone takes, or whatever, whatever they do. You will not learn everything.
Right.
It's like spaghetti. It's like, you're cooking spaghetti, you throw noodles against the wall, some of them are going to stick, not all of them will.
Right.
And that's how it is. So it's like,
You're on a roll, right? Quit from
but, I'm just trying to see. It's
It's
like,
a typical Saturday night.
yeah, I know, right? So basically, yeah, you need to be exposed to it. If you tell yourself, I'm not ready, you'll never be ready.
Right.
You need to go in and you need to grab it and take it.
Right, and I think that's the biggest knock on MPI is that we don't have algorithms and protocols and things like that. Each instructor brings something that's a little bit different to each class, and so, I think that's a weakness and a strength, both in the same thing, but that's what I try to tell everybody is that, you learn something from every class. When I graduated from school, I took roughly 5 different MPI classes, and I learned something in every single one of them. So,
Yeah.
And I can tell you, being 13 years in practice, I learned something every week in practice now. So you're just kind of scratching the surface on what you're learning, especially from a palpation standpoint. I think, when you get out into practice, and these two can tell you now, they're starting to see real patients and not students anymore. it's a whole different ballgame. Like being able to palpate is kind of the keys to the castle, and it just takes practice and experience, and you're never too young to start that, even in some of the upper and lower dynamic classes that we teach, because everything's based around the palpation model. My last question, and we'll kind of wrap this up, is what would you tell clubs that are currently struggling, or clubs that are trying to start up new? Like, what would be your main advice to those clubs? Like, is there like a set of systems? Is there something that you guys did in your clubs that created like this culture of consistency? Like they knew that every Wednesday they would be seeing this, or they'd be seeing this, or like what's your advice to clubs that are struggling, or clubs that need to start up like brand new? Like, what would you tell those clubs? I'll just start here.
Well, I mean, so if it's like a club on campus, we
Right.
usually we make it simple. We have a schedule that we want to hit. So the first thing that we always go to, seated scan, and we just kind of build on it every week. So the palpation that you learn that first week, we build it into the setup for the next week, and then it just it creates a culture where okay, yeah, we learned that last week, we're bringing it back to last week,
Right.
and it's a continual growth. There's a necessity to attend and a necessity to just keep practicing, and
Right.
and I think rally up a couple people and everyone just kind of follows. It's how it worked for you guys, correct?
Right.
So.
You guys, what was when you started and you kind of took this thing over, what was your plan to making clubs?
I think I never had the goal of making it a huge club. I think I was there for myself. I wanted to practice, and for whoever wanted to practice. And so it was never I want to make this huge club.
Right.
It was just, I'm going to show up every week. I'm going to work on this. Will's going to be there. If anyone else wants to join us, then come on, and we'll work on something fun. And I think that just started to build people who were dedicated to their craft. And then that passion just kind of spreads. It wasn't our intention to create that. It was just people getting together to practice what we should be learning.
It's kind of what I've seen in clubs that get big. It's because the reps are there to just kind of they could care less if anybody shows up or 100 people
I
show
just
up.
need one
It's the
person
same.
to show up.
That's right. You can get one more person back. Just
I follow any workers you want.
Well,
I think it's mainly the foundation. Always going back to the basics. Making sure we would do the same repetition so that it would just almost be muscle memory by that time.
Right.
And then just getting that touch and that feel down. Are we actually feeling what we want to feel or what we think we're going to feel? And so we spent endless hours, palpating each other, making sure okay, is this what we're trying to do? What is our intent? I think that's our biggest thing too, intent.
Right.
So making sure what we're feeling and what we want to do is exactly what we want to do, and from there on,
That's awesome. Frank?
So as far as the club goes, the best thing that I think that we did early on, as soon as the club was handed over to me, I sat down with Ray and I said, okay, what are we going to do each week? And we made a Google Live document, and we basically said, okay, we'll try to space things out so that, and then we actually shared that document with the other clubs on campus that were going over different things so that people would not be over adjusted in certain areas.
Right,
Well,
set up
we're not
for
really.
it.
So now it's
Set up,
testing, right?
yeah, we're setting up.
Anyway, over aggressively palpated in certain areas. I really do believe that a plan is necessary. As much as when I was given the club, it was do whatever you want to do. Each day, shut up. Do whatever you want to do each time you're here. And I felt that was good. Part of me, I really like to teach. So it's I was fine with let's have something that they can be used to seeing, and we'll change it up every quarter. But having a plan, I really do believe that if you do not plan, what is that saying? How's that go? Plan.
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah,
I don't
no
plan.
idea. We can't Google it.
Failure to plan is planning to fail.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
So it's basically if you don't have some kind of idea of how you're going to set this up, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And with as a rep, I really believe that the best way to make yourself, or make your rep thing and be able to sell everything out is to have a plan and have, if you have more than one person, then have one person take these duties and one person do these duties and someone else do the social media aspect of it or something like that, because if everybody is trying to do everything, it kind of turns, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. They're all trying to do too many things. You need to have everyone 100% dedicated to their task. And that's personally the way that I think that things
I
would
think
work
that's
best.
great, yeah, I think reps get too controlling, like they want to do all aspects, and it's good to have people that stick to their strengths and kind of.
I mean, let's look at this. I mean, Raymond here and Sam Will both write these really eloquent, beautifully written emails.
Most
whereas-
amazing emails.
whereas what I will
Race is
write,
better.
Bulleted lists.
My-
The best.
My-
And they're like the gold standard.
and then if I were to do it, it'd be like this bullet point, like, here, this is
Very
what needs to be
marquee.
done.
Yes,
And
yes,
yes,
no.
Frank, Rob,
Thanks.
that's it, yeah.
Initials, yeah, exactly.
So it's like, you need to figure out who is good for each task.
Yeah, that's perfect. Ray, anything to finish? Put a bow on this?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah, nice big bow.
big one. I don't know. I actually never started it. The hardest part was just trying to keep
Keep
things
it
rolling
going,
and
yeah.
keep a beast like growing and feed it. Really.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of what it was.
No,
It got big.
Keep
and
feeding it.
You're right.
We're trying to just
Yeah.
keep it going, right? So.
It was, I think it started with, like, we go back to Justin and Justin, shout out to you guys.
They were definitely.
I think it was
Big players.
their dedication and their skill level. You
Right.
know, that really shone through, and I think Kimmy and I both saw that within Justin. And Justin was like, we want to be like them.
Yeah, right.
You know, they are the, like, cream of the crop of the school almost, like, when it comes to adjusting and palpating. And so we dedicate our time to working with them, and then we practiced, and then slowly other people saw that. So starting a club or being a rep, you know, like, be dedicated to what you're going to do, and
Right.
be humble at it, and just work hard at it, and other people will start noticing it, and they'll just start following that. You don't have to say much, but people will just all of a sudden just come out of the woodwork and want to be with you. Yeah.
Another thing, like, we had to like schedule time for ourselves with just us to practice because
Yeah,
in the
because
club we're
can't
helping.
teach what you don't know,
Right. So
Yeah.
so we had to like spend our own time as well because you can't practice on like people you're supposed to be teaching, right? So it makes no sense. So that was another thing, like we really dedicated our outside time as well. So
I think you guys brought up some good points. Will, you're like a bullet point machine, like intent, focus, and just being humble at it. Like those are the kind of the things we see that commonly, like a common thread amongst clubs that sustain momentum and that continue to like be solid clubs for us. And it's not about selling out seminars to us. It's about, you know, kind of getting our message out to as many people as we possibly can, knowing that, you know, MPI has changed a lot since we've taken it over. And when I was a rep, it was very arrogant. We know more than you. We can do better than you can. We can adjust more things than you can. It was a very arrogant kind of culture, and we really tried to change that. And I think people don't realize how different MPI is now, 10 years after, 13 years after, like Mark took over in 2003, so whatever, it's 13 years or so, that it has definitely changed. And so, like, that's the culture that we're trying to get across to our students, and it's not about being the smartest or the brightest or the fastest or the most, you know, you guys are all fit, but it doesn't have to be about
That's
strength and all those kinds of things. So,
that's the justice.
but the thing that we've always talked about is that if you can grow a club, like you can grow a practice. Like we've always said that if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, right? But you guys have done such an amazing job because you're on the peripheries. You don't have the luxury of a Midwest club where you've got Chicago 2 hours away, or you've got Davenport 2 hours away, or you've got Kansas City 4 hours away, or St. Louis is just down the road. Like you don't have the luxury of that, but you consistently have had good numbers show up to all of our classes, and we've seen it, you know, here, we've seen it in CMCC, and we saw it in Florida. And it's just, you guys are outliers. Like, you don't have these big numbers to pull from. And so it's kind of it's a unique situation, and it's something that, you know, Brett and Mark and I kind of hang over some of the other clubs in the Midwest that you guys have done such a good job out here. And you don't have these big numbers to pull from. So that's kind of why I wanted to interview. I think
big picture is, I think your why is very clear as to why you're doing club. It's not necessarily to sell out seminars, like that's not your goal. It's to make yourselves better docs. You know, learn as much as you can when you're going through school, so that when you graduate, you're not worried about whether you can palpate or adjust. You're just worried about building a practice. And I think, like, your why is very clear. I don't think you guys probably ever sat down and said, hey, what's our why, the club? But I think it's become very obvious what your why is it's intent, it's focus. It's like the best way to learn something is to teach it. And I think you guys have really embraced that. You've definitely built a culture here that's unique, and it's one of the superstar clubs that we have that's out there. You guys are kind of something to be looked at and modeled after, just because you've done such an amazing job with that. So I just kind of put a little finishing touch on that. Like, you guys have definitely taken the John Wooden approach. Like, John Wooden said that he could take any player, and if they focus on just the fundamentals of what basketball was really about, like, he could make anybody a good player, but he always wanted to see how much he could push their potential. Like, that's why his teams were so good. He only worried about the process. He never worried about wins and losses. And you guys are definitely about the process. And so the reason I brought up Wooden is like California, like, cool thing I could bring up. But I mean, he definitely, he was so concerned about the process. Bobby Knight was concerned about wins and losses. John Wooden was concerned about how he could push potential in every single player that he had on his team, whether they were going to be an NBA caliber star or not. And if the win came, great. If it didn't, that was fine too. But it was more about the process, and you guys definitely know exactly what your why is, and you have the intent and focus to kind of follow through. And I think that's why this club is, and great character and great humility. I honestly think the only reason this club is good is because Kimmy.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. So we'll wrap that up. If you guys have anything else to add,
Just be authentic.
right? We're having a class here tomorrow, San Jose. If you want to sign up late, Dr. Soltis loves to take late night phone calls. We'll be here bright and early, 8:30 tomorrow morning with our lower dynamic class. Thanks for joining us. Watch this video over and over. If you're a club that's getting ready to start, get a hold of these guys. They know how to do this thing. All right? Thank you. Maybe. That's a wrap. Cool. We did. We got a couple.
One watcher, yes.
Dane. Oh, we got Blake. We got Rachel. We got Dane. So thanks for all your hard work. Dane. Yes.
Danger?
Cool, man.
All Kimmy.
You're good.
Thanks, all Kimmy.
On YouTube, we'll get all that stuff up. I got a couple other things going on there, so.
Cool.
You are like the social media